Today, guys, I'm going to tell you about how I got charged by a big wild Montana grizz at close range. But that'll be number 10 on my list. I'm going to kind of work up to it like they do. We were hunting on the east side of Montana in a very, very cold November. I was walking through a coulee and I saw this beautiful buck up on a ridge. I stalked him on my belly for about 600 yards and finally had a long shot at him. I think it was maybe 300, 400 yards, and got him. Look, somebody had actually shot through his antler before with probably a 22-250 or something like that. I always thought he was a pretty cool looking deer because he has a kind of a trident right here. And since I saved him from such a cold winter, he's always been kind of my pal, and he's gonna listen to the story today too. And the last story will be when I was actually charged by a grizzly bear at close range in the deep backcountry of Glacier National Park. So my first story is an encounter with a bighorn ram up on the Highline Trail of Glacier National Park. So my wife and I were hiking back from hiking to Granite Park Chalet, and as we round a corner, there's this big gal, and she's looking so terrified, and she says, "Help, help, this ram is trying to kill me." And I said, "All right, let me at him." So I got this big rock and I was chasing the ram and I was singing this song. You don't tug on Superman's cape, you don't spit into the wind, you don't pull the mask on the old Lone Ranger, and you don't mess around with Jim. And I was running after him with my rock. Don't pull the mask on the old Lone Ranger, and you don't mess around with Jim. That ram story is a freebie. Now we'll get to the 10 bear stories. I was born and raised in northwest Montana, Hungry Horse to be exact. And Hungry Horse is great bear country as it is. Right next door to where I grew up, there was a guy named Bill Broadhead that shot a 365-pound grizzly bear right in his backyard, 100 feet from my yard. That's the kind of area that I grew up in. Even today, my neighbor in Hungry Horse, less than a block away, Mel and Val, they had a juvenile grizzly getting into their garbage just last year. We also had a rather well-publicized incident up at Lion Lake, less than 2 miles from my doorstep, where a young man was attacked by a sow while he was picking huckleberries. And he said if he didn't have a second can of bear spray, he would have been dead. Also just a few miles from my home, up by the West Glacier Bridge, a forest ranger that we know named Treat was actually killed by a grizzly while he was on his mountain bike, and he was actually consumed as well. So this is the kind of area that I grew up in. So I've seen a ton of bear, and I'm not including the many sightings I've had while I was driving in Glacier Park or driving while hunting. But I will start with one driving story, number 10. All right, so my son Abe was a really good soccer player. I'm coming back from a soccer tournament in Great Falls, Montana, and it's about 5 a.m., barely light, and I'm crossing over Marias Pass on Highway 2 near Stanton Lake Lodge. Now, if any of you have been to my business, Willow's Huckland, you'll see I have a whole grizzly bear family of statues out front, and they're pretty impressive. But as I was driving that morning out in front of Stanton Lake Lodge, I saw this beautiful bear statue. It looked more realistic than mine, and it had a big white patch right here. It was quite near to the highway. And I thought, dang, I just went to all that trouble getting a bear statue, and these guys got one that's a lot nicer than mine. And then as I'm coming close, the thing took off, and I followed it across the road a little bit, but I believe it was a brown black bear. And it was the biggest black bear I've ever seen. It had to be a 500-pounder. My dad homesteaded in Montana. He came with just a truckload of chickens to Fairfield, Montana in about 1934. He stayed up all night the first night shooting 194 weasels that were trying to get into his chickens. And my dad was very unconventional in his own upbringing because he was kind of a little Tom Sawyer, Huck Finn river rat down on the Snake River of Lewiston, Idaho, catching sturgeon by putting whole chickens on a big hook and throwing it out overnight. And so when I was a young lad, Dad didn't have any qualms at all about me going down to the river, even alone. When I was 5 or 6, I remember my mom saying, "Jim, you can't have that kid off running around alone. He's only 5 or 6 years old." But Dad grew up that way himself, so he was, he'll be all right. Bud's got a good head on his shoulder. That was my nickname. I was a little mountain kid. I ran around all around the mountains. I even had a trap line. I can't say I caught much, but I had a trap line, and I was down fishing or hunting or running around with my dog Grizz a good portion of the time. And so I've had a lot of bear encounters. All right. Number 9, my wife and I were going to the Columbia Mountain Trail last fall, and as we drive in to go for our normal hike, it's a great place to go for a hike, by the way. It's just 2 miles from Hungry Horse, beautiful trail, just right there. And as we were driving in there to go for a hike, there this medium small black bear is just standing up like this, kind of looking at us. And to me, one of the best arguments why Bigfoot may not be real is that everybody's got a cell phone, and if they got a cell phone, why can't they just shoot a picture of him? Well, some of them have. But I can vouch for why some of them haven't, because I wanted to get a video of this bear, and I grab my cell phone and I start to shoot, and the bear takes off, and I take off after him. Being a hunter, I know how to cut animals off at the pass. I find a road that I know is going to cut him off, and I cut him off, and I'm driving my pickup right along this old road, and he's running just right next to me, and it is so cool, and I wanted to get this super cool footage. So while I'm chasing him, I got my phone like this, and I'm just about to get the footage, and my phone drops down between the seat. Where is he, hon?
It's right there in the grass area. Honey, it's going on that way, so I don't.
Get in, hon.
Should not look right now.
I'll go on the other side and we'll see if...
Did you see him?
Just now?
Oh man,
Honey, it's just a little one.
Honey, it's still the one baby there. It's right over there.
That was pretty cool. He was standing right up.
Right there, over there. Honey, look that you're chasing him. You might gonna get up.
Well, we're going hungry. So this footage that you will see is actually when I got out of the truck later and walked out toward where he was at and took a little footage, and as you can see, it's not even very good footage.
There he is.
Hi, dear. Well, we're out. Hi, mister. So that's number 9. Number 8, I was just 2 blocks downriver from the Hungry Horse Bridge on the Columbia Mountain side of the river. I was fly fishing with Clyde Hogue and Russ Lineberry. So after I fished a little bit, I decided to walk back to the pickup. So I'm walking back to the pickup, and there I see this probably 300-pound blonde black bear that's eating on that's 20 foot from the trail that I take to get to my truck, eating on a roadkill deer. And I'm looking at him and kind of backing up and thinking, whoa, that's a good sized bear. I don't think I want a chance walking right by him. I don't even have any bear spray. So actually Clyde and Russ and I walked down the river a ways and then went up to the highway and came out. So that's number 8. Number 7, my father taught me how to do rock work with the beautiful rock that we have here in Montana. If you've been around the rivers, you'll see green ones, red ones, the most beautiful round river rock you ever did see. So I'm out just downriver from the Blankenship Bridge up near West Glacier, and we're collecting rock. I had my son Josiah with me back 24 years ago when this happened. people didn't get too excited if you went out to the river, got some river rock to make a small fireplace. And that's what I was doing. So I had my son Josiah with me. I'm guessing he was maybe 7 at the time. And we're out finding and picking up the beautiful rock in order to make a little fireplace at my new house. So we're finding nice rock and putting them into my old Toyota 4-wheel drive. And all of a sudden, we look out in the river, and there's this bear swimming right toward us. A brown black bear swimming right toward us. And my son's eyes get real big, and my eyes got kind of big too, because he was soon going to be coming out on the same bank that we were picking rocks up at. And so I grabbed Josiah like a sack of potatoes and just ran to my truck and got into the safety of the truck. Number 6, here's a picture of me at about the time in which this incident took place. Now, my best friend at the time was named Jay, and we always wanted to hike Great Northern Mountain. And I've tried it about 3 times and failed every time, by the way. But anyway, we went up by Riverside Creek, and there really wasn't a trail in those days, and we just meandered up Riverside Creek the best we could as young men trying to climb Great Northern Mountain. All of a sudden we hear, "Rrr, rrr, rrr." And we didn't have bear spray or a gun or nothing, and so the 2 of us headed up a tree. We climbed a tree in some kind of quick fashion, and we just stayed up there hugging the tree for like 45 minutes. We heard a few more growls, but we never actually saw the bear. But after about 45 minutes, I said to Jay, "I don't think I'm much into climbing that mountain after this." He said, "I'm not either. Let's get out of here." So we got down and got out of there. Number 5, this was just a rather routine 7th grade field trip. So they drove us in a school bus up to the Avalanche campground, and we hiked on up to Avalanche Lake, and it was a beautiful spring hike. But as we got close to the lake, our guide is saying, "Hey, everybody, we got to really be careful. There's a sow grizzly and 2 cubs 600 yards away." What a beautiful sight it was to see that spring sow and the 2 cubs walking along the mountainside. I did not feel an immediate danger because the sow would have had to go down the mountainside to the stream and back up, and it probably would have been a 1,400-yard excursion in order to actually get us. So we continued up, somewhat nervous, to the lake and came on back down. My brother-in-law, Jim Dean, whom I'm in this picture with right here, he knew I loved this sort of thing. So when he was going on a hike from Logan Pass to Granite Park Chalet and then back down to many glaciers, he took me, even though I was 9 years old. And I loved that 3 or 4 day backpacking trip as a little mountain man dude. And as we were walking up around Granite Park Chalet, we looked down into the valley there, and there was a beautiful wild grizzly just kind of jogging through the alpine meadow. And I was kind of hooked as someone who loves the outdoors and loves seeing grizzly in their natural environment after that episode. Next, as a young guy, probably 10 years old, I was with my buddy Dee and his brother Daryl and maybe Junior, and we were up fishing on McDonald Creek. Now, I've never caught much for fish up around McDonald Creek, but it looks like a pristine, beautiful place to fish. And we were doing our best trying to catch a fish, and we weren't having much success, so we moved on up the creek a little bit and pulled over, and we're down there trying it a little, and then we saw a ranger come by. So Daryl went and asked the ranger, and he said, "Hey," and Daryl said, "Hey, we're not doing that great fishing here. Could you give us some pointers of where to fish?" And the ranger said, "Well, one pointer is I wouldn't fish here because there's a grizzly bear about 100 yards up the hill there." And we looked, and sure enough, there was a grizzly bear up the hill, and we got in our truck and decided to fish somewhere else. Next, this should not really count because we didn't even see a bear, but it's a cool story and I'm going to include it anyway. So my roommate Jeff Hart and I, we were living in Anchorage. We decided we'd go up to a little tiny town in Alaska called Talkeetna, which is the launch point of all the expeditions on Denali Mountain. And there's a guy there that's kind of a wild man that's got this jet boat, and he does all kind of crazy things with that jet boat, doing extremely dangerous rivers with his jet boat, going up them and whatnot. So we paid this dude to take us like 20 miles up this river from Talkeetna and drop us off on a sandbar. So he drops us off on this beach that is just filled with giant Kodiak and grizzly bear tracks that are about this long, and said, all right, we'll see you guys in about 4 days. And there was a stream coming in around that sandbar, so we decided to go up the stream. And there was these great big lunker salmon all over in this little pool in that stream. So we started to fish and caught a few. And then I broke my little reel, which was not really designed to be hauling in 12-pound salmon. So just as it's getting dark, I hook a really big one. And this vivacious salmon runs downriver about 100 yards, peeling off line from my drag, and my reel is broke. And I want to get this salmon in and be able to properly take care of it and eat it. So as it's getting dark, I'm doing this with my reel, taking him in an inch at a time and walking downstream at the same time. It took me a long time, maybe half an hour or so, to actually get this big salmon in. So I get the salmon in, and then it's almost dark. So anyway, I finally get my big salmon in and everything. And there's tall bushes all around, and I begin going back through these tall bushes in the almost dark. After seeing all them bear tracks, I'm being a little bit careful and giving plenty of hoots and hollers, and I did make it back to camp all right without seeing a bear, but I was a little bit scared nonetheless. That night, the most beautiful display of northern lights I'd ever seen were dancing all around that horizon, and it was a great experience. Next, a couple falls ago, Mary and I worked really hard, sometime 12 and 14-hour days at Willow's Huckland, my business in Hungry Horse. And so when it's done, we need to unwind. We booked a hotel at Many Glacier Lodge. Now, if you're in the Glacier Park area and you want to see a bear, go there. I've seen a lot of bear there. Well, that evening, my wife Mary and I walked down to the beach in front of the hotel, and we were watching a couple bears just having a good time, kind of frolicking around one end of the lake. Now, the next day, we're going to hike to Grinnell Glacier, and we find that the main trail is closed because of bear activity. So we got to access the trail system from that walking right through where all those bears had been frolicking. Mary says, there's no way I'm going through there. There's no way. And I said, come on, Mary, we each got a bear spray. It'll be just fine. And she wasn't going to do it until this buxom Montana gal just hikes right by us like it was nothing. And I said, see? So we hiked right through that bear country and had a great 14-mile hike that day. Maybe I see a lot of bear because I have a great respect for the animals, and although I'm an avid hunter, I hunt for meat, and so I don't shoot bear, because I've eaten bear several times and that's all right, but so being a meat hunter, I really don't hunt for bear. And to be honest, it kind of pains me seeing these shows of these guys that go into the most remote of Alaskan wilderness and shoot these giant bear in their native habitat for no other reason than to evidently have bragging rights. I don't quite get it. I feel they're a majestic animal that I've always had a certain reverence for. Although once I was hunting elk and my buddy got one up at Spotted Bear, he got a spotted bear at Spotted Bear. And we got a big pole and we put him on the pole and we carried him through the dense forest for maybe 3/4 of a mile until we got him out. Here's a picture of that encounter. Personally, I'm a believer in Yahweh Elohim, and yet I have a reverence for my Native Americans feeling about the grizzly bear, that it kind of embodies the spirit of the land. And there was a great Blackfeet chief around the Two Medicine area. He was a fellow that actually had more than one wife, and he also had more than one pet. He had 2 grizzly bear that were his pets. He got them when they were just babies, and he raised them, and even when they grew up, he kept them as pets, and they would walk around together with him and stay at the entrance of his teepee. And what I was told by the knowledgeable person who told me this is that his name was Walks Alone. And I said, well, obviously, who would want to get near the guy who had 2 grizzly bears walking around with him everywhere he went? As you can see from these pictures, I've gotten a lot of elk, and I've brought the elk out of the mountains on my back. Here's a picture of me in the freezing cold, boning out an elk in the backcountry. And I'm telling you, my hands were so frozen that I could barely get the meat off the bones. And although I've bow hunted and everything and been back in the backcountry a lot, I've never actually had a grizzly run in as a hunter. Although my dad told me a story up around Spotted Bear in the early days of the Hungry Horse Reservoir, where a guy went up there to hunt. He made his camp, he got a big elk, he hung the elk up, and a grizzly bear charged him. And he shot the bear as it was coming in to kill him, but it went ahead and killed him. But by the time it had killed him, the bear also died too. And in the spring, when a search party went up there, they found the dead bear, the dead man, and the rotting elk skeleton hanging up there.
It is a good rifle and killed the bear that killed me.
A buddy of ours from high school was cow talking an elk in during bow season. And when the grizzly hear that cow talk, they're thinking, dinner bells. So the bear came and actually bit Robbie so hard that it took a baseball-sized chunk of meat right out of his back. Although I've done a lot of bow hunting for elk and I've called them in on many occasions, I've never had a grizz come in responding to the dinner bell. Well, here's the actual story of how I got charged by a big Montana grizzly in the deep backcountry of Glacier National Park. Now, I became close friends with a soft-spoken, red-haired school counselor named Dale, who is somewhat of a legend in our Flathead County for extreme sports and mountaineering. One of Dale's feats was to do a solo ascent of Mount St. Nicholas. If you've ever seen that mountain, it's like this, a complete spire. Dale had to ford the Middle Fork River with his pack on. I ford a lot of rivers. Here's a little clip of me fording one. With his pack on, then hike overland through the brush and the grizzly country with no trail for about 10 miles to the base of the mountain, then climb this amazingly steep peak that required ropes and technical climbing in certain sections all by himself. And he did it. And I thought, whoa, there's a man after my own heart. And we became close buds and did a lot of extreme backcountry stuff together. We do a lot of ski mountaineering around Autumn Creek, Ole Creek, going 6 or 10 miles back into the backcountry in the winter and seeing world-class bull elk as we did. And Dale and I did a lot of adventures together, but on this particular day, he wanted to show me his favorite fishing hole. Now with us native Montanans, if you treat us well, many of us will share with you a place that you could go and catch a fish, or a place that you could go and pick some huckleberries. But none of us that I know will tell you our premier huckleberry field or our favorite fishing hole. It's reserved for people you've been very close with. And Dale and I were on that level, so he's gonna take me to his favorite fishing lake. And even on this video, I'm obviously not gonna divulge where that is, because there's sort of an unwritten code to keep these things between friends. But I will say that it was very deep into the Glacier Park backcountry. We had to drive for miles and miles and miles of a gravel road until we even got to the trailhead. And then once at the trailhead, we had to pack not only our backpacks full of our camping equipment, but we each had to take an inflatable boat. Dale had 2 boats for the occasion, and we took the one which was a 2-man raft, and the other which was a specialty kayak that he had purchased that was a blow-up kayak that had some rods that you stuck in it, and you actually sat on top of rather than inside of the kayak. So we get these heavy packs on. This is my North Face Moraine pack I bought when I was 12, and it's been with me on several continents, and we hike the 6 miles to the head of the lake, which itself is very remote. Then we get our packs off, take the boats out, and blow up the raft and the kayak. Dale wants me to use the raft, so I get in that raft and we paddle and paddle, and Dale gets on the kayak that I don't think he'd ever really used before. And after just a little ways, he fell right off of it into the cold water. He got himself gathered up again and kept going, and after a little ways, fell off again. And I believe before we made it the 4 miles into the head of the lake that he fell off even another time, if my memory serves me correctly. Anyway, long story short, we paddled 4 miles up to the head of the lake. Now we are at an extreme backcountry place where few people have ever been. We get our fishing gear out and start to fish, and every single cast we're catching nice big dolly varden. We also call them bull trout. And we caught a mess of fish, built a fire, and had us a nice fish fry. Then Dale says, well, we'll get camp set up and we'll go ahead and sleep here. I said, Dale, I am very uneasy about sleeping here. The Grizz of Glacier do not have a robust elk population to be feeding on like in Yellowstone. They really got to scrap for their food supply, and two guys in their prime smelling like fish could be really a worthwhile temptation. I said, Dale, I'm very uneasy about this. This is like the heart of grizzly country. And every Grizz within a 3 or 4 mile radius is going to smell that fish fry that we just had. And there we are. And they could be coming running. Dale said, man, I've done it before by myself. I don't think we have any other option. So we got the scent of the fish disposed of the best way we could by burning it in the fire. Got ourselves cleaned up to try to erase some of that odorous scent. And then we settled down in among the trees. Now it got very windy that night. And the trees are making these weird noises like, and in my mind I'm just thinking night of the grizzlies, and I'm thinking, whoa, we are in perfect Grizz habitat, and they could be just moving through this warm windy night coming to get us. And it was, to be honest, I didn't sleep real good. We got up the next morning, and the wind had turned the lake into just a froth of fairly high whitecaps, 2 or 3 feet high. Took a couple casts, got a couple more fish, and then we thought, man, we better get out of here while we can. If this wind gets any worse, we could be stranded back in here. So we packed up our stuff and headed out against that strong wind with the whitecaps splashing at us. And because the whitecaps were so strong, we had to really hug the edge and just going, just one row after another until I'm just exhausted. And finally, after about a mile, we stopped to take a breather, and I said, Dale, I gotta try that kayak. I can't do this no more. I am just exhausted. He said, well, you've already seen me fall off of this thing 2 or 3 times. Are you sure you want to do it? I said, I've got to. I can't paddle this rubber raft against this wind anymore. And so he said, all right, well, give it a try. So I strap my backpack onto the thing and I get myself on it. And I'm really trying not to tip over because it is really tippy, especially in the wind. Now, out and all away from the shore, it's like 2 or 3 feet whitecaps. So we're hugging the edge, like within 20 feet, maybe even just 15 or 10 feet. And we're hugging the edge because the whitecaps are not as formidable. The level of wind and whitecap was somewhat dangerous, and this little kayak thing was really super tippy. So everything in me was focused on trying not to tip over as I inched my way up the side of this lake. My concentration breaks for just a second. I look out of the corner of my eye, and to my utter astonishment, I see a dark steel gray, almost black, silver-tipped grizzly in the prime of his life, ripped, tearing up this somewhat rotten log and eating the ants. And it was a beautiful specimen. You could see the muscles rippling under that silver-tipped fur as he tore it up. And he was only 40 feet away, 20 feet of water, 20 feet of land away from my position at about 2 o'clock. And so I thought, whoa, I am in extreme danger here. What am I going to do? And I thought, I can't turn my boat parallel because I would be in the trough of the waves and I'd tip over for sure. So I thought all I can really do is head my boat at about 11 o'clock and try to increase the distance between he and I just a little bit. So trying to be really quiet, I turn my boat just a little bit. And then I take a couple of really quiet, purposeful strokes. And after about 2, I look up and he perceived I was there, and in an instant, without looking at me, without blinking, without thinking, he just charged with all of his might. I'd never seen something so lightning fast in all my life. It was that fast, and he was at the water's edge, and I knew they're great swimmers and he could come after me, but he didn't feel like getting wet that day. And with a mighty lunge, his pan-faced head and his bared teeth came toward me, and he goes, "Argh!" I didn't waste a split second with no deer in the headlights stuff. I gave mighty heaves of that kayak. I gave mighty heaves of that kayak as if my life depended on it, and maybe it could have until I knew I was out of harm's way. Now the bear that charged me did not have to stop. And around the same time frame, there was a guy fly fishing in the North Fork River, and a grizz came after him and didn't stop at the water's edge, but continued to pursue him, even though he was up to his waders in swift water, and he had to release himself into the current and go downstream for 125 yards as the bear continued to chase him. I can't really remember the outcome of that story, but I believe he broke a bone in the pursuit and may have lived. Now, somebody who's an expert at grizzly bears asked me later, were his ears laid back or were they vertical? And to be honest, I was too busy crapping my pants to figure out what his ears were doing. But if I had money to bet, I would have thought his ears were out vertical, because when their ears are laid back, it means they're really coming. Sometimes the ear being vertical, I've been told, can mean a bluff charge. But it sure didn't look like a bluff charge. To me, it looked like a mighty beast who knew that he was the undisputed top of the food chain, and that's just what he did if you disturbed him. And then I stopped and turned around to warn my friend, "Dale, there's a grizzly back there." And he was a good bit behind me because the raft was much slower than the kayak. He may have been a block or so behind me, but Dale heard me shouting about something and he didn't actually see the bear. Maybe it had decided to go off to find some undisturbed place of rest. But as I'm sitting there on the water of that beautiful mountain lake and the adrenaline is settling down, I'm thinking, wow, I'm one of the only people I've ever heard of who have been charged at this close proximity and lived to tell about it and didn't even have a scratch. And so I was feeling pretty grateful and pretty amazed, and in a grateful spirit, I'm thinking, wow, this is pretty amazing. Now I'm going to finish my program here with some footage of a baby grizzly that we took a couple of years ago. We were working hard like we do at Huckland, and then we took Mary's sister, Cherry, who'd been working with us, up to see Going to the Sun Road. And we prayed that it'd be a good day, and boy was it, because we saw a baby grizzly right off the side of Going to the Sun Road, and here's the footage of that. Wow, it's a baby grizzly bear.
It's a baby grizzly bear. Come on. I don't know.
Wow, right to the side here, baby grizzly bear. Look at him do his thing.
No, Maria, it's a baby bear. It's a grizzly baby bear. I'm on a grizzly then. Oh, okay, brown man.
It's a silver tip. It's probably about... Oh, look, he's smiling for me.
Look at him. Hey, zoom, A big one.
Oh, wow. Thank you, Lord. So anyway, friends, I hope you enjoyed this story. Like the video, subscribe to my channel, and share it with your friends. And if you come to Montana, go up around the Mini Glacier Lodge. Maybe hike to Grinnell Glacier, Grinnell Lake. Especially in the fall, there's grizzlies and bear activity all over there. Now, sometimes the trails are closed because of such, but that's the best place, which isn't miles from nowhere like we were at, that I know of, that you can view the beautiful Glacier Park grizzlies. I hope all the bear encounters I've had do not scare you from enjoying the beautiful Northwest Montana and Glacier Park. Keep in mind, I was born and raised here. I've probably hiked 4,000 miles, and the odds of a guy like me with all that exposure to the backcountry of getting charged are probably 25-fold at least more than what you'll experience. But get yourself some bear spray and keep it handy, because you don't have much time if they do decide to come.